In 1976, two friends built a computer in a garage. Now, at the time, nobody took it serious. They didn't really think it would change the world. But today, Apple is literally everywhere. So, how did Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak turn Apple into a billion-dollar company? Let's break it down. What's up, founders? Welcome back to Inside Startup Money with Chris. I'm your host, and today I want to talk about Apple. I think it's good to start with this company because it's quite possibly one of the most popular companies ever to exist. I think Apple has been massively impactful on the world with things like the iPod and the iPhone. I know you might use other products, you might not like Apple's product, I get it, but I don't think the world would be where we are without these products. And not just because the thing is, they didn't do everything first. We had MP3 players before iPods, but with iPods, it just changed the game. It was just different. We had some type of smartphone, like we had the BlackBerry, but then when the iPhone came along, it's a game changer. I'm old enough to remember, I was in the game with phones. We had flip phones and stuff and all of that before we got to the BlackBerry, and then we got to the iPhone. Even the Sidekick is in there too. I don't want to forget that. But the iPhone it transcends all the other smartphones we've ever seen. It's quite possibly the most important tool, product, whatever you want to call it, of my generation of a lifetime. It's just so valuable, so important. So I want to talk about Apple and how they got to this point. So the goal of Apple when they started was to make computers accessible to more people and make it to where more businesses can use computers. Now, that might not sound like a big goal now, but before we had these laptops and these little supercomputers in our pockets, computers were insane. They used to have entire rooms, entire office floors for one computer. I'm gonna put images up so you can see what I'm talking about. It looks crazy. I can't imagine. I'm thankful for my privilege that I can carry my little laptop or an iPad with me on a plane and watch a movie. But it's incredible. I can carry my little computer from different rooms in my house and relax in different places and get work done just whenever I feel like it. And I think that's important to understand because Apple at the time I don't think Steve Jobs had this vision of the smallest computers that we have now. But it was definitely about making it a lot easier because, again, what they had at that time just wasn't there. But this is also what made investors think Steve Jobs was crazy. So the first big investment that Apple got was $250,000 from Mike Markula. I had to read his name to make sure I'm saying it right. Markula. And this is the thing. It sounds like it's a small amount of money, but that was enough to get him share a whole portion of the company. Not small shares. He was the third founder essentially in this company, putting up $250,000. And I think the story goes, it was after he saw the computer in a garage and he was like, okay, this is incredible. And he invested $250,000. And I think this was also after Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak had been trying to get funding from other VCs around San Francisco, out in Boston, I think in New York as well. These guys were putting in work trying to get funding, but they couldn't. But Mike Markula was that guy who came in with the pedigree, with the skills, the insight, the input. And that's something that really helped Apple out in those early days. I think that's the first thing you should take away from this as a founder is if you are getting funding, I think you also have to prioritize the other insight that investor, that angel investor, the VC, that they can input to you. If they're just giving you money, that's great. But there are a lot of VCs out there who will give you money, but also will support you in those other ways that you actually need. Some will say it. I've met some that say it, but then I talk to their portfolio companies and it's the opposite. And hands off, I'm not saying no names, but I see that happen. I think it's good to make sure that that's a priority. Because again, if you're just chasing money and you have a good product and everything is working out, you can get money. But getting the money and the insight, that's where the true value can lie. Now, getting that funding from Mike actually helped build Apple One. That was the first product. But getting it out into market was not as easy as it might seem. Again, let's take a step back. Think about it. If you've only seen computers that were massive and took up a lot of power and you didn't even know what you could do with a computer, if you don't use it enough to know what you could do with it, would you be excited to buy one? Probably not. You wouldn't care. So, of course, Apple's early sales were low. Most people didn't know what they had. They didn't know the opportunity in front of them. Now, from the stories that I've read and doing research on this and in the movies and all of that stuff, we know Steve Jobs wasn't the most likable guy. Like, I think a lot of founders try to model their personality after Steve Jobs, which I think is hilarious because nobody liked them. And I don't think that you have to be this dislikable, angry person to get funding for your company, to have a successful company. That never made sense to me. I don't get that. The success for Apple started in 1977. That's when Apple II came out and they became a household name. That's when the shares jumped. They started getting more progress, seeing more results. And Mike's part on this was really good because he actually helped Steve Jobs focus on the marketing and getting the product out there to people, and you don't hear about Mike a lot. He's not in the spotlight. When you hear about the Apple story, they usually don't mention him, but it seems like he was really good at playing behind the scenes, just getting his money and putting in insight and input into the marketing strategy and all of that. But he didn't want to be on a press run like a Steve Jobs. And I respect that. I think some people in the startup world want to operate that way. And those are the people worth working with, because if they're focused on just getting a result and getting paid, that those people are going to be trustworthy. They're reliable versus them trying to do different small things for spotlight or attention, notoriety. You don't want that on your team. Now, in 1980, that was when Apple went public, and it made them one of the most profitable tech companies by far. Like, they were already in that conversation from that IPO launch. If you don't know, that's initial public offering, where a company goes public and they sell shares to the public. So now you as a regular person can go and buy shares of Apple. Simple, right? And when they did this, it just went to the moon. I think there are three things you got to take away from this if you're a founder. Number one is you have to understand investors put money into visions and people. Even if you don't have a product perfectly figured out, if you got a good vision and a roadmap of where you're going, investors love that. They love that because that shows who you are as a person. Then you got to have that commitment and that unwavering will to win. Like, they have to know you're not going to give up and quit when things don't go your way, when you don't get it right the first time, it's not perfect. The investors want to believe that you're going to go to the ends of the earth to make this thing work. And then if you have to pivot and you've gotten the proof you need to pivot, that you'll also be logical enough to make that move. So you have to meet investors where they are in that regard. Number two is that if you're going to make a new technology, it has to be human friendly. Apple is a good example of this because their recent product, the headset one where you put that on, and Apple Vision Pro or whatever, we're not there yet. Like, most people are not comfortable putting a whole helmet on to scroll or whatever or watch games. It's just not comfortable. Like, it's not human friendly yet. Will it get there? For sure. I think in 5 to 10 years we'll be there. But right now, I don't think we're close to it. I just don't think we're close. Even with the whole metaverse thing. We're going to buy everything online and make it people don't trust technology at that level just yet. That's something important to understand. I think third is traction, getting that early traction. If Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak hadn't had their prototype in the garage working when Mike came by, they don't get that funding. Like, that's the make or break right there. That's why I think you should focus on traction early on, just as much as you focus on, getting funding. Even if you are building something that needs a ton of funding, you have to have some kind of concrete proof that you're doing something, you're making progress. That impact is so important, I think, for your personal brand and for every VC that you connect with. So when you meet them and they ask you, okay, so what's going on? Have you gotten any traction? Have you made any sales? You want to be able to say yes. For whatever it is you're selling or whatever level, you got to be able to say, yeah, we've done this or that, or we made this kind of progress, that you're connected with customers. At the very least, have some method of distribution set up. Today, now especially, you should have social distribution, email, video on YouTube, all of that stuff. If you have distribution channels set up, you can launch damn near any product you want. Because whatever tweaks you need to make, you just go and ask the audience that you're distributing to, and they're going to tell you everything. It's really that simple. Something else I learned while researching this video is that Apple's first logo, one of their first logos, was Isaac Newton sitting under a tree. That sounds terrible. Like, that literally sounds like one of the worst logos I've ever heard, even as a concept. But later on, it was, changed up to the Apple we know now, which I think is just perfect. Like, come on, it's perfect. Yeah, so I know Apple is a $1 billion company, but there are still some things they did in the early days that you can learn from as a founder. Make sure you like the video, follow the channel, Comment your startup name down below. It costs you nothing. It's completely free. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Chris. I will see you next time.